Hey everyone, welcome back. My name's Diana. This is my channel Bookish Di, and today I am starting a Reader Unhaul project. So last year I had done a Reader Unhaul TBR to try and motivate myself to read things that were on my TBR, and I will say most of the things I did end up unhauling. I ended up either just getting rid of it, unread, or I started it, decided I didn't vibe with it. The ones that I know for sure that I read were the Dandelion Dynasty books 1 and 2, which I did enjoy. I did pick up the next 2 books in the series, and I'm planning on reading them. But I wasn't very consistent with it just because it was kind of a year-long thing, and it was hard to keep myself accountable with that. So I decided to take a page from Mara Like Books Like Whoa, where she recently did a project where she had a pile of books, read, I think, like either a few chapters or up to 50 pages, whichever was shorter, to see if she vibed with the books, and if she did, continue on until she either finished or decided to DNF. And I'm running out of shelf space where I keep most of my books, and I desperately need to clear some room. So I decided to do something like that to keep myself more accountable, to make sure I actually do this project. So I'm gonna do that. I have chosen 12 YA books, and the reason I chose YA is I've found lately that I'm not as into that age category. Like YA is a much more difficult sell for me than it used to. And I have all these YA books that I haven't touched that I've picked up throughout the years. And I think if I am going to clear out shelf space, that's a really good place to start, because I can probably figure out pretty quickly whether or not I will vibe with the book. The main difficulty for me will be allowing myself to DNF. I'm not a very consistent DNFer. Like there are times where I'll soft DNF, where I'll just read a few pages and be like, I'm not vibing with this right now, and then leave it be. But harder DNFs are tougher for me. So this, I think, will also be a good exercise for me with that. So without further ado, let's get into the books that I've pulled from my shelf. So first we have some books that I got during the brief time that I subscribed to Owlcrate. So the first is A Sweet and Bitter Magic by Adrienne Tooley. This is a sapphic YA book, and it follows two young women, one who is a source of magic and the other who is a witch who's been exiled. And I've heard mixed things about it, but I do think the cover is very pretty. And yeah, so we'll see how I feel about it. The next is A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. This is a YA dark academia. I don't know too much about it. I think this was the last book I got from them before I canceled, but I do like the Gilded Edges. Again, this is one I've heard mixed things on, so we will, and dark academia is really hit or miss with me. So we'll see how I do with this, and if it's something I just end up DNFing early on. And then the last Owlcrate book is Sisters of the Snake by Serena and Sasha Nanuna. This is, I think, a Prince and the Pauper retelling that's Indian inspired with twins. Again, it's not something I've heard too much about, but it is a chunky book and has been taking up quite a bit of room. Yeah, I don't know about this one, but I'm willing to give it a try. Next are just a bunch of standard YA books that I've picked up. The first was actually on my original Reader Unhaul, and that is Anger is a Gift by Mark Oshiro. This is a contemporary YA that follows a young black boy, Moss, who I believe witnessed the shooting of his brother or his father, and is dealing with PTSD and anxiety around that. And it gets into themes of police brutality, criminalization of young men of color. And yeah, I had picked it up because I had followed Mark Oshiro back when they were doing Mark Reads and Mark Watches, and this was their first book, and I want to support them. So actually, I think this might be a first edition. Let me double check. Yeah, this is a first edition actually. So anyway, I will see how I feel about this. I've held on to this. I think this came out in 2018. Yes, I've held on to this for 5 years. So I think it's time to either read or pass it along to someone who will enjoy it more. Next is The Sky by Rebecca Kim Wells. This is a YA fantasy where a young woman, mad that her girlfriend has been taken by Imperial forces, decides to steal a dragon. I picked this up because a friend had read it and really liked it, and I like the sound of an angry girl stealing a dragon. But it has been on my shelf. I think this came out, when did this come out? Because I picked it up pretty soon after. This was published in 2019, so it's been 4 years. It's time to read or unhaul it. Next is Cia Martinez and the Moonlit Beginning of Everything by Raquel Vasquez Gilliland. This I picked up with a blind date at a book package, and it's about a young Mexican-American woman or teenager whose mother disappears, and then she comes back and says she was kidnapped by aliens. It sounded interesting, which is why I originally picked it up, but again, it's just been sitting on my shelf ever since. Then I have Tarnished Are the Stars by Rosie Thor. This is a YA science fiction book, and it follows a girl with a mechanical heart who does illegal technology, and they're doing a cat and mouse game. And I picked this up, one, because Rosie Thor is a local author to me, and also I heard it had asexual representation, and I really wanted that. I have since read Rosie Thor's other YA book, and I was kind of mid on it, so we'll see if I like this one more than I liked her other one. Candle in the Flame is the next one by Nafisa Azad. This is a Middle Eastern, and a Silk Road inspired YA fantasy. And I picked it up mostly because of the blurbs. So Rachel Hartman, who wrote the Serafina books, which I love, blurbed this. Kate Elliott, who's one of my favorite authors, blurbed it. So picked it up, again, sitting on my shelf for years. So we'll see if I like this or if it's something I pass on. Another author who I've tried one of their books and was really mid on it is Liliana Rivera. So I have Dealing in Dreams on this TBR. So this is a dystopian book that follows a girl gang, and I picked it up because that sounded interesting, and also the cover is absolutely gorgeous. However, I did read one of her newer books, Light Up the Sky, I believe it was, and again, it didn't work for me. Like, I think it's one that definitely works better for its intended audience, but it did not work for me. So again, this is kind of, I'm trying to figure out if Liliana Rivera is an author where it was just one book that didn't work for me, or if it's just their writing style as a whole, because I do have another one of her books on my shelves, and if this ends up being one of the books I DNF, I'm probably going to get rid of that one too, just because I think it'll probably just be a sign that she's not an author for me. Another YA science fiction book on my list is Whole Metal Girls by Emily Skritsky. This is another book where I picked it up on the recommendation of a friend. I found it at Powell's, and it is about augmented soldiers, and it sounded interesting. I will say I didn't read her adult books. I had meant to read Bonds of Brass, but I was told by a friend that the monarchy stuff would make me angry. But I'm hoping that this will be more of my vibe. I haven't heard too many people talk about it, but again, we'll just see how I get on with it. Second to last on this TBR is Scavenge the Stars by Tara Sim. This is a gender-swapped retelling of The Count of Monte Cristo. And again, heard a friend talk about it, seen some mixed things, but I've been meaning to pick up Tara Sim for a while. I also have her adult book on my shelf, which I still need to read. So yeah, I'm not super familiar with The Count of Monte Cristo, but I do love a good revenge story, so hopefully I vibe with this. And then last but not least, another book that has ace rep that I picked up on a recommendation from a friend is Belle Revolt by Lindsay Miller. This is a YA fantasy that is inspired by the French Revolution and The Princess and the Pauper and swapping places in society. But again, I think I picked it up back in 2020. It's been sitting on my shelf. This is a common theme where I pick up books and it sits on my shelf. So I'm really hoping that this project will let me figure out what is and isn't working for YA for me right now, as well as clear some room. So I'm probably going to do updates once I finish the initial read through and figure out what I am or am not keeping for reading on. And yeah, we'll see how I do with these 12 books. Hello, it is Sunday, June 2nd, and I have read at least one chapter from each of the 12 books. And I think I'm not being strict enough because there's only 3 books so far that I'm for sure DNFing and getting rid of. And then the other 9 are split between ones that I am pretty sure I'm gonna finish and ones that I'm more on the fence on and that I feel like I need more time to figure out whether or not this is gonna be a book that I wanna read or not. So let's start with my DNFs. So in the order that I DNF'd, the first is Dealing in Dreams by Leia Rivera. I mentioned at the start that I had a feeling that this might be a DNF just based on how I felt about her previous book. And unfortunately I was right. I read the first chapter and the prose was really choppy. It felt very stilted. And I don't know if that was a stylistic choice or not, but it just didn't work for me. I also found the premise where these 16-year-olds are the security for a city a little, I don't know. For me in my early 30s, it was a little too much of a stretch. But yeah, I could see teens liking it, but it's not something for me at this point in my life. I do have another Leia Rivera book on my shelf that, because I'm an optimist, I'm gonna keep for now. But again, if I end up doing a more brutal unhaul of stuff on my shelves to make room, that's probably gonna be one of the first things to go, just because I am 0 for 2 with books from her that are my speed. Then I have Sisters of the Snake by Serena and Sasha Nanua. I read one chapter of this and the prose felt clunky. It felt like a little, I don't want to, like, super street rap tropey. So I don't know. It's also a really long book. Like, it's over 450 pages. And it was one where it is dual POV, but I just didn't feel the urge to read on, because I have some other books that are dual POV and I did read the other points of view because, you know, one chapter is one person, the second chapter is another, but I didn't feel the urge to read this, so I'm also going to be getting rid of this. And then the last one, this one I was a little on the fence about, but I decided just to get rid of it after thinking about it for a bit, and that is A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. This is a YA Dark Academia. And I read the first few chapters and I was a little on the fence because I've heard some good things about it. However, I realized, like I said, sitting on it, thinking about it, that this is probably not the dark academia that I like. I prefer dark academia that's more of a critique of these institutions, of higher ed or private boarding schools. And this felt more vibey than anything else. Like, the main character, she's coming back to do her senior year at this boarding school, and there's like magic and rumors of witchcraft. And yeah, I don't think this would necessarily be a book for me, so I'm just gonna DNF it. If I ever get the urge to try it out again, the library exists, but as of now, I don't really want it on my shelf. Okay, so the books that I am for sure continuing with, and these I'm just gonna talk about the ones I'm pretty sure I'm gonna finish versus the ones that I'm a little more on the fence on. So first I have Scavenge the Stars by Tara Sim. I read the first chapter and I thought I liked it. So we're in the head of this young woman, Amaya, who goes by Silverfish. She's on a debtor ship and she's almost done, but something happens and she rescues this rich man, and I'm intrigued. I'm interested to see what happens next. This is a dual POV. I didn't get around to getting to that second POV, but I'm pretty sure this will be something that I will finish. It is pretty short, and I was able to get the audiobook from the LA Public Library, so I'm gonna give it a shot on audio and see how I feel about this. Then Whole Metal Girls, I, again, only read one chapter, but it really gripped me. It was really interesting. We meet one of our main characters, and it sets up the reality of someone who's poor living on this fleet and why she's making the choice to join this, like, augmented human peacekeeping force. So again, hopefully this is something I end up finishing. It's also pretty short. It's under 300 pages. Then there was one, I was a little surprised like how into this I was. I had to stop myself reading because I ended up reading like the first 25 pages pretty quickly, and that is Cia Martinez and the Moonlit Beginning of Everything by Raquel Vasquez Gilland. This is a YA sci-fi book where a teenage girl, her mother has been deported and was crossing the Sonoran Desert and disappears and is presumed dead. So this has really short chapters, and I really like the voice of Cia Martinez. I like kind of how we get her anger and grief and her trying to deal with the fact that her mother is dead because the racist deputy sheriff deported her. So I'm really hopeful about this one. I think this one might be a surprise fave. The last of the books that I'm pretty sure I'm gonna finish is Anger is a Gift by Mark Oshiro. I read the first chapter that kind of gives us a bit of a setup with Moss, his best friend Esperanza, and the boy that he has a meet cute with on BART, Javier, and we get a little bit of background into Moss and what his history is. So this one I think is going to be one I read slowly just because it is a heavy book, and I can tell from the first chapter it's going to be a heavier book. But I like Oshiro's writing. It made me homesick for the Bay Area. So yeah, this was, like I said, this is probably going to be one that I slowly read throughout the month. And of the books that I'm going to keep going, however, I'm going to be a little stricter with them just because I'm a little bit more on the fence. I have The Candle and the Flame by Nafisa Azad. So I read the first few chapters and the prologue, and it's very atmospheric and the world building is interesting. However, the sentence structure is a little awkward for me, and I don't really have a good grasp of the characters at this point. Like, one thing I will say for the books where I read them where I'm pretty sure I'm going to finish them, I got a good sense of who the main characters are pretty early on, and that drew me in. With Fatima, I'm not as sure, which is why I'm a little like, do I want to keep reading? Do I not? So as of now, I'm going to keep reading, probably going to give it another like 20 to 50 pages, and then I'll make a decision whether or not I DNF. Then also in this pile is Shower to the Sky by Rebecca Kim Wells. I read the first two chapters. I got to the inciting incident where Marin's girlfriend is taken by the Emperor's diviners, and it was fine. I'm interested to see like how Marin joins the Dragon Academy or like the Dragon Riders, but it didn't blow me away the way that some of these other books did. So again, I'm just gonna give it a little more time and see how I feel and whether or not I want to keep going. Tarnished Are the Stars by Rosie Thor is also in this pile, and this is one where the setup is working for me a little bit better than Fire Becomes Her, which is the other book of hers that I read. However, it was just kind of mid to me. So similar thing, I'm gonna read a little more, see how I feel, but it's, I don't know. I think for me, part of the problem is like when I read Cinder, I liked it, but looking back, it's kind of soured on me, and this is a little bit similar, so I don't know. Sweet Bitter Magic by Adrienne Tooley. Again, this is one where I read points of views from both characters, but I don't have a good grasp of the characters yet, and some of the setup is a little hard for me to accept, so I want to give it a little bit more of a chance before I figure out if I'm DNFing or not. And then Belle Revolt by Lindsay Miller. So the reason why this is on my keep on reading is the way the world is initially set up is you have this gender binary magic. Men do noonday magic, women do midnight arts type magic, and there's like different types. However, we're already seeing a bit of a subversion of that, and I'm interested to see how it moves forward. And I'm also more interested in the kind of societal change, revolt type situation. So again, I'm gonna give it a few more chapters before I figure out if I'm DNFing or not. So yeah, so not as successful of a first round as I was hoping. I will be doing updates book by book as I either finish or DNF. And yeah, I will probably have an update later this week. Hey everyone, it's Monday, July 3rd. I am at the coast. I am not driving, I am parked because it is disgustingly hot where I am and the coast is like 30 degrees cooler. And I finished the first book on the 9 remaining, and that is Shadow the Sky by Rebecca Kim Wells. I brought it with me to the coast to see if I would either finish it or decide to DNF, and I ended up finishing it. It's a pretty quick read. It's a little under 300 pages, and I ended up liking it. Okay, like it was very middle of the road for me. It was like a 3.25 stars. With this book, Marin, our protagonist, decides to go steal a dragon after her girlfriend is taken by the King's Seers, and she, like, her mom is part of these mountain people who have ties to the dragons, and her father is originally from the colonizing country that's like conquered all these different countries, and it's now an empire. And so she decides to go steal a dragon, and it's very much indie-ploying her way along. Like, she does not have a plan. She's just like, I'll make it up as I go, and it mostly works out for her. So I did like that aspect, and I thought some of the world building that Wells did in this was interesting. What didn't quite work for me, however, is because it's so short, it made it a little difficult to get characterization for Marin other than she wants her girlfriend back, which is fine. Like, I do respect that, but I wish we had gotten a little bit more about her. We did a little at the end. Like, she does have this righteous anger, which I appreciate. There's a very cute dog nearby. Anyway, so I did appreciate that. It also, I don't know if the author meant to read it as potentially cheating, but there's like a love triangle with Marin, Kaya, her girlfriend, and this boy Sev that she meets, and it got a little close to cheating. Not quite, but almost. And so I don't know how that's going to resolve. I don't know if it's going to be polyamory or if it's going to be a love triangle. That just frustrates me. This is only a duology though, so there is only one more book. I will probably just borrow it from the library, to be honest. Well, I'm glad I did finally read this because it gave me some dragon stuff that I wanted and some better world building than Fourth Wing had. However, I don't see it being something I'm going to reread, and I'm at the point where books that I'm trying to keep are ones that I know I'm going to want to reread or like hold some special significance for me, and this just doesn't quite hit that or like make that cut. So anyway, I'm glad that I read that. I'm glad that I read this. I'd recommend if you're looking for a pretty short YA involving angry girls, bisexuality, and dragons. So yeah, that's one down, 8 more to go. We will see how I fare, and I will update you by the next time I finish or DNF a book. Hello, it is Tuesday, July 4th, and I'm officially calling it I'm DNFing Tarnished Are the Stars by Rosie Thorne. So I've been reading it most of this morning, and I'm finding it really sloggy. So the chapters are really short, and you can kind of see that because each new chapter has this like dark heading. And while I think short chapters can be good, the fact that these chapters are going between 3 different points of view just makes it really choppy, in my opinion. And it's making it difficult for me to get a sense of like who each character is and like get their voices. Like, so when I started this book, I'd only ended up reading 2 points of view, Anna and Nathaniel. And Anna is the mechanic and Nathaniel is the commissioner's son who has a secret mechanical heart. I hadn't met Eliza yet, who is the queen's ward / spy. And she's the one I think I'm having the most difficulty with because right now her personality is fanatical loyalty to the queen and she's a spy. Like that's, oh, and she likes girls. That's kind of it. And I don't know, I'm not really feeling it, and I am trying to be good about DNFing books for this project if I'm not feeling it. So yeah, this is just, it's not really working for me. I don't know if I would ever want to try it again, but if I do, I'll just borrow it from the library. Like there's no reason for me to still have this on my shelf. So yeah, the first DNF of the 9 books I'm trying to read for this after that initial culling. So yeah, I don't know which one I'm gonna pick up next. Maybe I'll try Cia Martinez and the Moonlit Beginning of Everything, because that one did also have short chapters, but because it's all from Cia's point of view, it didn't feel as choppy to me as this is. So yeah, I'm a little disappointed because like this does have, I think, Arrow representation, Arrow rep with Nathaniel, but I'm just not feeling this. Hello, it is, oh God, what day is it? It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, June 5th, and I am not doing a good job at this DNF part of this project because I don't know, I feel like I should be DNFing more, but it's hard for me because anyway, it's hard. DNFing is hard for me. It's something I'm trying to learn to do better. But related to that, I did end up starting and finishing Belle Revolt today by Lindsay Miller. I ended up listening to this on audiobook, and I can't remember both narrators' names. I know one of them's Moira Quirk, which I did enjoy. But anyway, I did end up liking this. This ended up being like a 3.5, 3.7 star for me. So similar to Shatter the Sky. Like I did like this one a little bit more than Shatter the Sky. But similar, I don't necessarily know if I'm going to reread it or not, so I might end up unhauling it once this project is done. But I did end up liking it. I will say the beginning is really kind of drags, and the Prince and the Pauper setup is a little like contrived coincidence. And I think if I hadn't been listening to this while I was doing data entry at work, I probably would have DNF'd like a third of the way in, but I forgot to check out more audiobooks. So I did end up finishing this. And yeah, overall I did like it. I am sorry if you can hear the saddest little gray cat in the world right now. I did end up liking it. I thought that the way the author had this like French Revolution era inspired fantasy element worked. I thought the commentary on power and class was really interesting. I really liked how Annette, one of the characters, described her asexuality as well as being biromantic. There is a trans love interest as well for Emily. And yeah, I also liked how the author was doing, like, changed our perspective in regards to the relationship between Emily and her mother, and kind of how how it was a relationship where there was affection, but they weren't good at expressing it in ways that the other person understood, and that wore on them. So yeah, I did like that. I will say, again, the beginning is a little bit slow, and if you're not willing to get through like the first third or so, it's going to be difficult. Like, I can see people quitting after the first third. There is some body horror in this, just as a heads up. But yeah, for the most part, I enjoyed this. Like, a pretty solid read. I liked it, like I said, I liked it more than Shatter the Sky, and I did like Shatter the Sky. So yeah, that's another book off my TBR. We will see if I end up reading through another book or DNFing the next one I read. I know I mentioned in the last update I would probably try and start Cia Martinez and the Moonlit Beginning of Everything. So I will potentially do that, or I might switch to a different book, kind of just depending on my mood. But yeah, overall, pretty solid read. Hello, it is Friday, June 7th, and I have decided to DNF Scavenge the Stars. I got about halfway through, and I don't feel like holding it up. I'd rather you just look at Leia, because she is incredibly cute. Yes, she is. She's so cute. She's so cute. Anyway, I decided to DNF. I don't know. So, from what I thought I was getting, both from the cover copy and the first chapter and a friend's review, I thought it would be much more revenge and stabby, and it's not. It's much more of a slog. And we're also getting a second point of view. It's the son of a merchant in the city Murray who Amaya is targeting. Amaya is the other main character. She's the girl on the cover. And I'm kind of bored. I don't know. I don't know if it's just the pacing or the content, but it's not really doing it for me. I think if I wasn't doing this project, I might have kind of soldiered on to try to finish this book, but I'm just not feeling it. And like, the point of this project is to get me better at DNFing, and so that's what I'm gonna do. I don't know if I'll ever like feel the urge to pick this back up and try it again, just especially given how far I got in it. And I mean, I did look at some other reviews and it seems like the ending is a bit of a mess. So yeah, I'm gonna DNF this. I'm gonna unhaul it, and I'm gonna try another book tomorrow. I'm gonna give myself a bit of a break. I have another non-project book that I'm trying to finish, so I think I'm gonna go to that instead, or watch something, or play a video game. But yeah, I am a little disappointed. I had been really hoping that I would like this, that it would be something even if I ended up getting rid of the physical copy because it's not something I want to reread, I was hoping it would be something that overall I would enjoy, and sadly it is not the case. So we're at currently a total of 5 books that I'm DNFing and unhauling out of this project out of 12. So I'm doing better than I thought. Hi, buddy. Someone else is here. Oh, are those sirens? He has to go save the city. Anyway, I don't know which one I'm going to pick up next. We will see how I feel, and I'll update you when I either finish or DNF the next book. Hello. We have a mildly concerned Leia here. So it is Thursday, July 13th. And yeah, I know there's been a break between when I've been updating. That's just because I took a break to finish another book, and then I got distracted, but I did finally finish Cia Martinez and the Moonlit Beginning of Everything by Raquel Vasquez Gilland, and I really like this. Do you want the book, baby? I really enjoyed this. So of the 3 books that I've finished, I think this is definitely my favorite. So this book is a mix of contemporary and magical realism and sci-fi, and it's all those things, and I think it did it for the most part pretty well. It also covers a lot of really heavy themes. So it has content warnings include sexual assault, racism, use of slurs, PTSD, death, violence. I know I'm missing some other ones, but it deals with those, but I think it does it really well in a really age-appropriate way. And it also has this really beautiful look of a friendship that's starting to crumble, but also the fact that Cia and her best friend Rose kind of refuse to give up on the friendship at the end, and the friendship when it ends is different than where it started out, but I think that's really good. And also I really liked how the romance in this was handled, and how it handled issues of sexuality and recovering from sexual abuse, and just I thought it did a really good job of how YA books can include sex without it being quote-unquote spicy. So I really enjoyed this. The only kind of complaint I had was there was a side character. Oh, Luke's here too. Hi, Lukey Loose. Oh, really? You have some feelings on the matter? You're just being silly. I think he's mad that Leia's in the spotlight. No? Anyway, so one of the side characters was just kind of annoying, and the shtick kind of lasted a little too long, but overall this was really, really good. I would give it a 4.5 out of 5, and I would really recommend this. I think I'm gonna keep this book because I think it's gonna be one that I might want to reread, and just definitely a highlight of this project so far. So I still technically have 4 books on the pile, and I do think I was overly ambitious. I should probably have just done 8 or 10. I think I thought I would DNF more than I did. But anyway, I will say for the two that I was a little on the fence on, so Sweet and Bitter Magic and Candle in the Flame, what I think I'm gonna do is give them 2 more chapters each. And if I'm not intrigued by those 2 chapters, I'll DNF. I'm just going to do that tomorrow, so Friday, and then I'll update whether or not I decide to finish or not. And then I'll move on to Whole Metal Girls and Anger is a Gift, and then I will be done. So say goodnight, Leia. Leia doesn't like her paws touched. Anyway, I will update you all once I've decided whether or not I'm DNFing these. Hello, it is Saturday, July 15th, and yeah, I'm calling it on both Sweet and Bitter Magic and The Candle in the Flame. So I actually read a little bit, I ended up getting about a fourth of the way through Sweet and Bitter Magic, because I did do the read 2 chapters and see how I feel, and there was enough where I was like slightly interested, but I don't know, I wasn't completely sold on the dynamic between Tamsin and Ren, and like I know it's going to change and evolve because it's a sapphic book, but the way that they were written was both, it just didn't really work for me. And like one of my friends enjoyed this book. She's like, it's a 3.5. So like, who knows, maybe I'll check it out from the library at some point in the future and see how I feel about it. But as of now, I am DNFing it and gonna unhaul it. And this, I only got 1 more chapter in and I decided to call it. So I think with me, I think with this one, Candle in the Flame, I found the writing itself was hard for me. Like not difficult, but just the style of it didn't work. It just didn't work for me. And I think I met who the love interest is going to be. And if it's going to be an immortal and a teenager, I'm out. And yeah, I'm not in that era. So yeah, 2 more to the DNF pile, 2 more to eventually unhaul. So I'm going to go on to my last 2 books. So Whole Metal Girls and Anger is a Gift, and we'll see if I get through either of those. Hello, it is Saturday, July 22nd, and I just finished Whole Metal Girls by Emily Gretzky. And oof, this one did not land the ending. So this book, just general, what it's about, it's alternate first points of view of 2 different characters, Kay and Aisha, and they become these cyborg super soldiers for different reasons. Aisha, because she needs to take care of her younger siblings, and the only way she can earn enough money, especially when her younger brother gets sick, is to become this Sela. And then Key, we don't find out why she becomes a Sela until later on, but she's from the more privileged end of the humanities fleet that's searching for a home, and there's like something wonky with her memories, but she's very, driven, very proud. And this book covers their training and uncovering a conspiracy with regards to the fleet, and it also has some people who, the fractionists, who want to split the fleet to find a new home. So what I liked with this book is that I thought Aisha and Key were very interesting characters. I thought Aisha especially was interesting, although towards the end I realized that she is kind of a Katniss derivation. And what I mean is she is someone who is sacrificing a lot for her younger siblings, and they're basically the only reason in the world that she's kind of keep going and doing what she's doing, kind of like Katniss and Prim. And if you've read The Hunger Games, something happens, and it's kind of in line with what happens in this book. But I thought it was very interesting that this was someone who, like, even though she was from the disadvantaged part of the fleet, like, was much more interested in survival and protecting her family. So, but then we get to the end, And then with Key, she's a bit of an unreliable narrator, and she wasn't always pleasant to have in her head because she's very bigoted towards the beginning, and we find out again why that is. So I really liked their points of view. I thought some of the world building, especially around the Sela, so the cyborg soldiers that they become, was also interesting. However, the end is where this book just dropped in its ratings for me. So I feel like what the author was doing was trying to do something similar to what Suzanne Collins did in Mockingjay, just not good. And what I mean for that is it feels like we're trying to get both sides are terrible, and, you know, we need, like, both sides are bad, except what we ended up getting in Mockingjay was not necessarily that District 13 is bad, but President Coin is bad, and that it's not necessarily like the rebel faction as a whole, just like the person in charge. Whereas we didn't get that. There wasn't a lot of depth with the rebellion or like the separatist group, which I do think harmed it. And it was just really frustrating because I think, I don't know if the book had been longer or if it had been like more than a standalone, we could have gotten more depth, but it felt very shallow. And again, it felt like the author was trying to copy what Suzanne Collins had done, but just not in a good way. So I think I'm gonna end up giving this a 2.75. Like, there were things I like, I just really hated the ending so much. So yeah, I'm gonna be unhauling this. I'm glad it's finally off my shelf, and I don't know if I'm gonna read more by this author. I know she has a trilogy that came out, although a friend read it and told me that the monarchy stuff would make me mad. And I know she has another adult book coming out, I think this year, so I might just borrow it from the library and see how I feel, but I don't know, I was really let down by this. So yeah, so I only have one more book for this project, Anger is a Gift by Mark Oshiro, and I'm hoping to finish that before the end of the month. I have 9 days to do it. It is a longer book though, but yeah, I did not expect this project to take as long as it did. I think I was overly ambitious. So if I do something like this again, I'm gonna like do 6 or 8 books instead of 12, because I have no sense of scale and it's biting me in the ass. Hey everyone, it's Saturday, July 29th, and I finished the last book in this project. I finished Anger is a Gift by Mark Oshiro earlier today, and overall I really enjoyed it. So this is a book centering a Black teenager named Moss, and before the book starts, we find out that he saw his father murdered by police. There was a robbery at a different store, and the police showed up at the store that Moss and his father were at, and his father was murdered. And when we meet Moss, he's on BART with his best friend Esperanza, and he has a meet cute with this other boy named Javier. And it's the last day of summer, and when Moss gets back to school, he finds that things have gotten worse for the students there. There's fewer resources for academics, for sports. There's more of a police presence on campus, so there's now random locker searches, and that leads to an escalation with the school safety officer, as well as an increased police presence, and it all comes to a head in this book. In addition to that, you start getting this sweet love story with Moss and Javier, and you get a discussion about community building and activism, allies versus accomplices, as well as discussions about the systematic forces of oppression, police brutality, and kind of why things might not change, or the amount of work it does to get a little bit of change. So, like I said, I really liked this. Massive content warnings for this. You have police brutality, PTSD, racism, xenophobia, death, PTSD, discussions about the criminalization of marginalized students. Yeah, it's a heavy book, but I think it was really well done. So one thing I particularly liked that Oshiro did in this book was show the community around Moss, because a lot of what happens in this book and a lot of what Moss ends up doing wouldn't be possible without his support system. So you have his mother, Wanda. I loved the relationship between Moss and his mom. You have the Moss and the relationships with his mom's friends. You have Moss and his group of friends at West Oakland, and just the amount of community around him and the number of people that it takes to affect change or to start working towards change, I thought was really well done. I really liked the fact that Oshiro didn't pull any punches with this story. I can see some people potentially being frustrated with the ending, but I thought it was I thought any different ending would be disrespecting the readers and sugarcoating the realities of what they were depicting in this book. In terms of things that didn't quite work for me, it's mostly the pacing. The front felt like it dragged a little, and I can understand, maybe why they chose to do that, just to kind of give you this normalization, but start weaving in this unsettling presence, this unsettling police presence, and starting to see how things are starting to slowly boil over. But I do think that parts of it could have been excised, especially because once you hit that tipping point a little more than halfway through, things start going and going, and it's pretty nonstop. So that's really my only complaint. But otherwise, I thought Oshiro did a fantastic job with this book, especially considering it's their debut. I saw them back when they were doing Mark Reads and Mark Watches on tour, I think in 2015 or 2016. And this was originally going to be the science fiction work, and I could see some of the core of what was going on here. So some of the tools that the Oakland Police Department uses to basically corral protesters, or the metal detectors that they install. I can see the elements of what Oshiro read on that tour in this book, but it's overall a very different story than what they initially described. But I think it works. I would give it, I think, between a 4.25 and a 4.5. I also think I am going to keep this, even though I'm not necessarily sure I'm going to read it again. But I thought it was really well done. I thought it was a very good book, and I can definitely understand why it's like in its 10th or 11th printing now. I think it's a good book to accompany The Hate U Give in terms of the conversations it's having about racism and police brutality, and just how cyclical this entire thing is. Because especially a lot of what Oshiro was describing about the protests and the police reactions to protests, this was published in 2018, and I think a lot of it is reflecting, or you can see what happened in 2020 with the George Floyd protests in this book. So overall, really well done. I have another book by Mark Oshiro on my shelves, and I'm looking forward to reading that because I think they're a really great writer, and this is a fantastic debut. So I don't know why my throat is going. I haven't talked a lot today. However, I'm done with this project, so let's do a quick wrap up. So I started with 12 books, and of the 12, I had 3 that were pretty immediate DNFs. I tried a chapter or 2 and was like, no, this isn't working. And so that was Dealing in Dreams by Leia Rivera. I think her style is just not for me. I do have one more book on my shelf from her. I'm gonna give her a 3rd chance, but after that, if it just doesn't work, then it's pretty clear she's just not an author for me. Sisters of the Snake by Serena and Sasha Nanua. This one, I read the first chapter, I didn't vibe. It seemed very clunky and I don't know, it didn't work for me. The first chapter just didn't work for me, and I wasn't super compelled by the character that we met. So I'm just gonna get rid of that. And then Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. This is a gothic dark academia, and it's not the dark academia I like. So Yeah. Then of the remaining 9 books that I didn't immediately DNF, I had 4 that I ended up DNFing at various points. So the first was Tarnished Are the Stars by Rosie Thor. I just wasn't super compelled by the characters, and I found the short chapters and the three different points of view just, it dragged it down and it didn't keep me engaged in the story. Scavenge the Stars by Tara Sim, the gender flip Count of Monte Cristo retelling. This one, I got about halfway through before I DNF'd. And again, I didn't find the stakes very compelling. I was a little annoyed with the fact that I was told there was this revenge story, and Amaya seemed like others were directing her revenge and it wasn't necessarily coming from her. So and I also found the other point of view character just not, again, super compelling. So I ended up DNFing it. Candle in the Flame by Nafisa Azad. This one I didn't get super far into. I found the prose just didn't work for me. And I met who I think is the love interest, who is an Ifrit, who is an immortal being, romancing a teenager, and I was not in the mood for that, and the prose wasn't enough to keep me engaged, so it was a DNF. And then Sweet and Bitter Magic, I got maybe a quarter of the way through, and again, it was just, I didn't find Tamsin and Ren super compelling, and I also found the stakes just weren't really working for me. And then I did actually read 5 of these books, so I am going to rank them from worst to best. So worst on the list, Whole Metal Girls by Emily Skretski. I was mostly enjoying this. This was, somewhere around a 3.5, like 3.25, 3.5. And then the last half hit and it just went down. So I ended up rating it like a 2.75. I'm really sad. I think this could have been good. I just hated how Skretski handled the ending. It was trying to be Suzanne Collins, but she just wasn't good enough to do it. Then Shatter the Sky by Rebecca Kim Wells. This is the when the main character's girlfriend gets kidnapped, she goes to steal a dragon and Indy plays her way through it. This is fun. I did find that I wasn't getting as much of Marin's character as I wanted, like her motivations aside from I need to rescue my girlfriend, and there was a potential cheating element that I wasn't super fond of, but it's a 3.25 solid book. I'm going to check out the sequel from the library because I am intrigued by how it's going to end. Belle Revolt was 3rd. This is the kind of Princess and the Pauper French Revolution inspired fantasy, and this was fun. I read it on audio, and yeah, this one ended up, I really liked its discussions about power and change. I liked the 2 characters after that little rough beginning. I liked the side characters, and I thought where it ended up was really, I thought the ending was really earned. So this was about a 3.5, 3.75. And then I can't really decide which one. I think they're both very good and I can't really decide. So tied at the top is Anger is a Gift by Marco Shiro and Cia Martinez and The Moonlit Beginning of Everything by Raquel Vasquez Gilland. I think they're both really wonderful books for teens that explore really difficult topics in age-appropriate ways. In particular with Cia Martinez, I really appreciated how it explored sex and healing from past sexual assault in a way I think would really resonate with teens, and I think that's something that I appreciate seeing in YA books. And with Anger is a Gift, I think it's a really timely book about a lot of relevant topics for a lot of teens. And I think that it handled those topics really well. So overall, these are the top 2 books. So of these books, I am going to be getting rid of almost all of them. The only ones I'm keeping are Cia Martinez and Anger is a Gift. Everything else, even this one, which I enjoyed, it's not something I necessarily see myself rereading, and if I do, I'll just check it out from the library. But overall, I think if I do a project like this, I'm going to not have as many books. I definitely was too ambitious for this first one. And I think I'd probably focus on adult books next because I do have a number of adult books that I've had for a number of years that I need to get through. But overall, I think it was good. It let me kind of read books, or at least try books I've been accumulating for a while, figure out what worked and what didn't work, as well as let me know what authors I can look forward to reading more of, or determine, well, they're not exactly for me. So I hope you enjoyed this vlog. It was definitely a new experience. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have thoughts, opinions, please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy what you see, please like and subscribe, and I'll talk with you later. Bye.